1 in 5 women will experience sexual violence in their lifetime, but recent studies by the National Union of Students find that a quarter of women at university will be the victim of that sort of crime.
Thousands of American service personnel lived and worked here. Now the old aircraft hangars, like this one, are listed buildings, but a lot of them on this site stand empty. But some have been transformed into specialist storage facilities like this one.
This is the first batch of emergency aid being sent from the Oxfam depot here in Bicester to Damascus, the capital of Syria. And over the next fortnight, 43 tonnes of cargo will be delivered. The charity says that already hundreds of thousands of people are in need in Syria. The big priority at the moment is sanitation and a clean water supply, and so the parts in those boxes will be used to set up these huge water cylinders, and they'll be built in the heart of the city.
Oxfordshire County Council says it strongly challenges the notion that national bikeability is better than its own scheme. It says its training is delivered in the same way and to the same national standard. And by using volunteers, it's able to train many more youngsters in Oxfordshire in a more cost-effective way. Nikki Mitchell, BBC South Today.
The company behind the plans to build the plant on this site, a firm called Pure Green, have declined our request for an interview. But their plans say that the smoke that will be emitted from the wood burning process will be filtered so that it's safe and that there are no risks to public health. But that's been nowhere near enough to convince many people living nearby. Councillors were due to vote on whether to give the scheme the go-ahead last night.
On a normal weekend, these are the seats which Chris Wilder will be sitting in, egging on his Oxford United team to run faster and harder. But come this Sunday, this dugout will be transformed into a finish line for the 5,000 or so people finishing their 13.1-mile run.
People into swimming regularly in the next year. Well, this is brilliant fun, but if you're going to have a go at open water swimming, do be aware of the hazards. The Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents says the water can be much colder than you think, so be aware of that. Also, make sure you can find a safe place to get out when you need to, and if possible, swim as part of a group, like this one. For people that sign up, there'll be free coaching sessions.
The inquest heard around 45 seconds passed between these warning lights going off and the train passing through. And in that time, a female passenger from another car who saw they were in trouble ran onto the crossing trying to help. As the train approached, she ran back to safety and then saw as the train hit the car with the 2 men still inside.
The land here near the River Thames hasn't been touched for about 50 years. At the moment it's quiet and peaceful, but in the next couple of weeks or so there'll be lots of activity happening, dumper trucks and other big preparations making way for this huge nature reserve.
Up to 18 young people are housed at 1 foot forward on the Iffley Road. Some are referred here by prisons, probation or mental health teams.
Of course it would be.
People living nearby say crowds often congregate outside and police are regularly called to deal with disturbances.
You're going to take a dirty lick in a minute, I swear on my life.
When we attempted to speak to the managers here, our presence quickly became a problem. Okay. All right, we're off.
We're asking you. Asked you nicely.
Households nearby told us they feel threatened and didn't want to talk on camera. Others argue young offenders shouldn't be pushed out of the community, but need to be better managed.
It began at 7 o'clock this morning, the whole operation involving more than 100 officers. But experts say it's hard to measure the impact of raids like this on local drug dealing. It's thought it can just push it to other areas.
The neighbourhood awoke to a busy scene. Several roads were cordoned off as a team of armed police stationed themselves outside a property on Moreton Avenue. Just after 9 o'clock, one of the 2-year-old girls inside was released. A couple of hours later, armed officers went in and brought out her sister. illegal challenge by campaigners saw the costs to the taxpayer spiral upwards by around £15 million.
These specialist surveyors have been scaling Hockmore Tower in Cowley today to see what condition it's in. It's one of several tower blocks in the city that's being assessed for renovations.
And then just beyond there is our first phase of development, where we're making way for family housing, but also we want to preserve some of the character of the area.
The Queen has only missed 4 Maundy services during her 60-year reign.
Engine in the back here.
Yeah, and we've got our own engine.
When I started my little food business,
Gruffalo grumble.
Story time at Culham's preschool. Nick Clegg getting to grips with the Gruffalo.
Awarded 90 operational service medals for the regiment's tour of Afghanistan. It spent the last decade in conflict zones like Bosnia and Afghanistan. Its job to move troops, supplies, even civilians. Now their service to the RAF is complete. The Merlins finished their last missions in May and now they're all back in the UK. In a few months' time, all of the helicopters will be transferred to the Royal Navy. At RAF Benson, it wasn't just the Merlins getting a send-off. One of their longest-serving pilots, Flight Lieutenant Bill Kenrick, flew his last flight after 34 years. A moment to reflect on some poignant memories.
One of the saddest things I ever did was take some Afghan children who had been injured by explosive devices by the terrorists, who had then been treated in British hospitals, and they were being taken back to their village with some of their parents or relatives and some of the village elders, and they were also grateful that this is what the British forces were doing for them.
Now the helicopters are being prepared for their move to the Royal Navy, where they'll replace the retiring Sea Kings. Royal Air Force crews are also training their colleagues in how to operate the Merlins. In the meantime, the RAF are receiving new helicopters.
Well, we're actually receiving the PUMA Mark IIs, I think one of which you can hear and see over my shoulder. But the PUMA IIs have started to be delivered now, and again, they are a great leaping capability.
During its time in Afghanistan, the Merlin moved nearly 8,000 tonnes of kit and 130,000 personnel. As yet, no one knows where they'll be deployed next. Victoria Cook, BBC South Today.
It's a chip off the old block, but this Mark II Puma is faster, will go further and will carry more. We're currently flying at 160 miles per hour above Oxford, and as you can hear, it's extremely noisy. That's because the 2 engines that power this Mark II Puma are directly above our heads. It's an upgraded version of the Puma which has been based at RAF Benson for more than 10 years, used to drop troops and equipment into battle around the world. Instead of going out of service like the Merlin, millions of pounds has been spent to extend its life.
In terms of upgrading the Puma from the Mark I version, far cheaper than buying new helicopters, and indeed it's given us a very, very capable aircraft that will endure until the mid-2025 sort of region.
The Mark II can respond within hours for humanitarian or combat operations. Its extra power means its performance will remain the same in the hottest or coldest conditions.
Well, it's a step-changing capability. We've got much more powerful engines now, which means we can lift more and go further. We've got a digital autopilot, which means the aircrew have much more capacity to look at other things that are going on around them. It makes it a much more safer aeroplane as well to fly.
At the moment, crews are just training on 7 of the Mark II Pumas, but come 2015, 24 will be in use from RAF Benson. Jessica Cooper, BBC South Today.